As when you're working problems like these, I always say to write down the original and keep that kind of noted somewhere. So this is our original. We're gonna keep that noted that this is what we want. Now another way I could look at this original is to break up the parentheses. Say, well, I know what 14 minus 2 is, but notice that our answer options keep the 14 and the 2. So I want to keep the 14 and the 2. But if I look at another way to write the original, I have a positive 4, I have a positive 14, and I have a negative 2. So what we're really looking for is an expression with a positive 4, a positive 14, and a negative 2. Are you guys comfortable on how I was able to get rid of that parentheses, but still just say, this plus in front of the parentheses says keep everything inside it the same. So the original isn't that complicated. It's the options given to us that get really complicated. So I'm going to color code each of these options. Please don't think that the color means it's right or wrong. I have not solved this one yet. We're going to solve this together. So option A there gives us 4 minus, then a parentheses, negative 14 minus 2. Now remember, this is not recording you guys, but can anyone tell me what we have to do with this negative since it's right against a parentheses? Yeah, and there's a fancy word. It's called distribute. So anything right against a parentheses gets distributed or essentially like passed out to everything inside of it. So this negative says make these following numbers the opposite of what they were. So when we make those numbers the opposite of what they were, actually both of them become positive. Nothing happens to this 4 because it was before that negative. But this 14 was negative, is now told to become the opposite, so it becomes a positive 14. This 2 was negative, is told to become the opposite by that negative up front, and becomes positive. Do we want positive 4, positive 14, positive 2? No. We want a negative 2. So A is not one of our options because the positive 2. So the positive 2 is what breaks it. I'm going to circle that with a pink highlighter to kind of be our indication that this does not work. That's bad. That makes A not our option. Any questions on how I just did what I did or why A is not one of our answers? We're looking for equivalent expressions to the original 4 plus 14 plus negative 2. Now some students are telling me, why just solve each of these? Like A, B, C, D, E, I just solve them all and see which one's equal. You're trying way too hard. If we can quickly look at what the signs do, we can work a lot more efficiently. So if we look at option B is parentheses 4 minus 14 minus 2. Now there's nothing in front of this parentheses, so we have an assumed positive, right? We can always assume positive unless we see negative. Positive just tells what's in the parentheses to stay how it is. So our 4 is positive, and our 14 is negative, because remember we said instead of minus, we can write plus the negative, and our 2 is negative. We have positive 4, negative 14, negative 2. Darn it, we got the negative 2 that we wanted here, but we wanted positive 14, and we don't have that. So the negative 14 there looks to be the thing that makes it fall apart and not work. Questions on why that one didn't work to be equal to the original? All right, I'm going to try to wrap this up in 3 minutes, which I probably won't be able to. So guys, I will keep recording this, and this will be posted on YouTube later, but I know you guys probably have to get to Creative Start. I forget if it's 9 or 9:10. I have till 9:05, and then you guys have Creative Start at 9:10, so I have 8 minutes. We can probably do this. So in C, they start with 4 minus negative 14 minus, and I don't know why they put the 2 in parentheses, but they did. What happens when we have minus negative 14?
Positive.
Becomes plus positive, right? Add the positive. Now this minus and then 2 in parentheses, I don't know why they put the 2 in parentheses. There's no reason to do that. It's not wrong. There's just no reason to do that. So instead of subtraction, we're going to say plus the negative 2, and we're going to give a reason for those parentheses to be there. Wait, we got it. We got a positive 4, we got a positive 14, and we got a negative 2. This one checks out. It is equal to our original expression. Any questions on how C is equal to the original expression? C is the first one that we really like. All right, let's look at D. D says 4 plus 14 plus negative 2. Wait a minute. D is the one that we already figured out, right? Because we started with the original that's in the box, but instead of talking about subtraction, we said addition of the opposite. So D is the one that we already solved. We actually don't have to do anything else with D to figure out that is equivalent. So the last one that we'll solve will be E, and that starts with a negative or opposite symbol. Then in the parentheses, we have negative 4, minus 14, but we don't really like talking about minus. And outside the parentheses, minus 2. What's that word that we do with the negative that is right against the parentheses? Starts with a D. It's written right here. Distribute. So, opposite of negative 4, positive 4. Opposite of negative 14, positive 14. Because remember, we said we can talk about that as minus, but we don't really like to do that. So we think of this as plus negative 14. And then minus 2. Well, we don't like talking about minus 2, so we'd rather say plus negative 2. And then we ask ourselves, do we have positive 4? Yep. Do we have positive 14? Yep. Do we have negative 2? Absolutely. So E is also one of our options there. So C, D, and E would all be equivalent expressions to our original. Now really quickly, because I do have 5 minutes left, let's talk about the last problem that I had here. So Janelle dropped a sandbag from a hot air balloon at a target. I'm going to shift this to the side here so we can see it a bit easier. I'm going to get rid of that. Let's full screen this again. That is 250 meters below the balloon. At the moment, the sandbag is 75 meters below the balloon. So which of the following expressions represents the distance between the sandbag and the target? So this is one of those situations where I would draw a quick picture, right? Why not draw a quick picture? I know my sister stole all my art skills. She's an amazing artist, but I can still draw some pictures. So if I have a hot air balloon, we'll do a basket and a balloon. And we'll say this is, how high is the hot air balloon? Well, if the target is on the ground, and the target is 250 meters below the balloon, we can really call the balloon at 250, right? So we could say the location, and we'll just say the location of the people, or whatever you want to call it. Whatever they tell us is at 250. Now the sandbag is 75 meters below the balloon. So the distance between the balloon and the sandbag, so I don't even know how to make a sandbag. We'll say that's our sandbag, is 75 meters. Now my picture is definitely not to scale because I have no idea what scale I'm working in. Then it says, which of the following expressions represents the distance between the sandbag, the sandbag and the target? Any suggestions? So we've got a target. Remember, this is not to scale. if we're going to add to our picture, we can say down here's our target. The distance from here to here was 250, but they want distance between the sandbag and the target. So they want this distance. So if we want I think this is peach, not quite sure. If we want the peach colored distance, remember this is not to scale. We knew that this was 250. We knew that this was 75. Oh, here's why those expressions don't make sense. See how there's a negative 75 being used, and in B there's a negative 250 being used? They actually make this 0. They make that 0. Instead of it being 250, they make this 0. So the sandbag is actually at negative 75. The target is actually at negative 250 because it's 250 below. This is why we have to pay very careful attention to how things are phrased. We're using the balloon as 0. I'm even going to put a 0 in the balloon. We're using the hot air balloon as 0. We're using the sandbag location as negative 75. We're using the target as negative 250. And remember, the distance between two numbers is either the absolute value of the higher minus the lower, or the absolute value of the lower minus the higher. So since we have both negative numbers, we're working with a negative 250 and a negative 75, we'd either be looking for, if we go higher minus lower, it's actually negative 75 minus negative 250. Or if we flip that order around, it's negative 250 minus negative 75. Of course, all of that in the absolute value because we're talking about distances. Do we have one of those in our options? Yes. Option B takes the higher location. Even though it's a negative number, it's our higher location, negative 75, minus our lower location, which is actually at negative 250. We could also turn this around. A is almost right. Option A is almost right. If it started with a negative 250, then it would be correct because our lower location is negative 250. But A is not correct because A does not have that negative. So B is correct. It took our negative 75 minus negative 250. And if we solve this math out, the absolute value of negative 75 plus 250, and who is going to win in a battle between bad 75 and good 250? Well, I think we all know pretty quickly good guy is going to win here, and that would actually be by an amount of 175. So the distance still, and that is actually what we had shown in peach over here. This is actually 175. There's still 175 feet before it hits the target. All right, with that, you guys should all go take a break and then go to Creative Start. If you need more math help, please, please, please email me. Send me screenshots of specific problems, and then we can arrange times during AO or extensions to meet. Today, I pretty much just have extensions. Today's a little bit more crowded. So guys, have a wonderful day, and I will see some of you in class here in just a little while.